Hello and welcome to This Date in History, also known as TDH. The audio is audioing. Anyway, this show is all about the events that occurred to date in years past, both recognized by actual historians, but mainly things that we personally find intriguing enough for us to bring to you. The sources of this information comes from the Smart Device application, Today in History, What Happened Today in History, Historical Calendar, and the website onthisday.com. For links to those sources, the music, and anything else potentially interesting that we gather throughout the show, check the underbar of the description below. Anyway, I am A.O. Xander, and today is Saturn's Day, also known as Saturday, June 4th, 2022. Starting us off in the year 701 BC, the oldest Chinese recording of a solar eclipse occurred. I don't know why I put that there, so let's see here. Oops, wrong one. Alright. Doing a significant time jump into 1039, Henry III became Holy Roman Emperor. Moving on up into 1070, Roquefort cheese created in a cave near Roquefort, France. Alright. Roquefort cheese was created. 1133, Rome, Inoculus II crowned Lotharius III Roman German Emperor. Alright. 1357, the Peace of Ath was signed by Count Louis II of Flanders and Duke Wenceslas of Luxembourg, ending the attempted of the secession of Brabant. 1391, a mob led by Ferran Martinez surrounded and set fire to the Jewish quarter of Seville in Spain. The surviving Jews were sold into slavery. You know what? That sucks, but it's better than being killed, you know? Because you can always escape. Jumping on up into 1487, Lord Lovell and John de la Pole. Okay, that's weird. Alright, I'm going to have to talk to Sohan about that. Yeah. Anyway, in 1615, during the siege of Osaka, forces under the shogun Tokugawa Ieyasu took Osaka Castle in Japan. 14 years later, 1629, Dutch East India ship Batavia wrecked on Morning Reef off the Houtman Abrolhos, Western Australia, with 200 survivors. Only 70 survived after 3 months due to mutiny and murders. So dang, that wasn't even the end of things for them. 1632, Prince Frederick Henry, Prince of Orange, conquered Venlo. And then in 1647, English Parliamentary Army, Parliamentary, okay. Yeah, 1647, English Parliamentary Army under Cornet George Joyce took King Charles I as a prisoner during the Second Civil War. Dang. Jumped on up into 1664, Viceroy William Frederick conquered Dijlershens. 1666, during the Battle of Dunkirk, the English and Dutch fleet battled. 1741, Prussia went to the Covenant of Nymphenburg. Alright. What is the Covenant of Nymphenburg? Let me look it up here real quick. The Treaty of Nymphenburg. It was a treaty between Bavaria and Spain that was concluded on May 28th in 1741. Alright, is this the same thing? France and Bavaria. Prussia goes into the covenant. Would this still be... Yeah, Prussia's in here, okay. Alright, so I'm going to add this in the underbar for anybody to... expand their knowledge on this subject matter. Moving on up into 1745, during the battle at Hohenfriedberg Silesia, Frederick the Great and Prussia defeated Austrians and Saxons. 1756, Quakers left Assembly of Pennsylvania's army land at Furness, Lancashire. Okay. 4 years later, in 1760, during the Great Upheaval, New England planters arrived to claim land in Nova Scotia, Canada, taken from the Acadians. 9 years later, in 1769, a transit of Venus was followed 5 hours later by a total solar eclipse, the shortest of such an interval in history. That's interesting. The transit of Venus essentially is like when you can see Venus go across. It's transit. So that happened 5 hours after a total solar eclipse. That is pretty cool. 1783, Joseph and Joaquin Montgolfier made the first public hot air balloon flight unmanned, covering 2 kilometers and lasting 10 minutes with an estimated altitude of between 1,600 to 2,000 meters. Well, that's cool. So the first time we took to the skies, we actually didn't. 1784, Madame Elizabeth Thibault became the first female balloonist. Cool. Actually, I wonder if that's the same person, because there's a movie recently where they went to the hot air balloon trying to break the record and everything. They use a balloon as a parachute coming back down. I wonder if this is the same person as far as the character stuff. I don't know. Anyway, 1792, Captain George Vancouver claimed Puget Sound for Britain. Or Puget Sound, sorry. Puget Sound. 10 years later, in 1802, grieving over the death of his wife, Marie Clotilde of France, King Charles Emmanuel IV of Sardinia abdicated his throne in favor of his brother, Victor Emmanuel. 3 years later, in 1805, Tripoli forced to conclude peace with the U.S. after war over tribute. In 1812, the Louisiana Territory was officially renamed Missouri Territory. Interesting. 22 years later, in 1824, the first free press without government approval was founded in Australia, the Hobart Town Gazette, by ex-convict Andrew Bent. Ooh, ex-convict. Dang. You want to talk about freedom of speech? Ex-convict, given publishing rights. That's pretty interesting. 1 year later, in 1825, unseasonable hurricane hit New York City. Dang. 6 years later, in 1831, the National Congress selected Leopold von Saxon-Coburg as King of Belgium. 365 days later, in 1832, the Third National Black Convention met in Philadelphia. Jumping up into 1859, the Second Italian War of Independence occurred, in which the Battle of Magenta resulted in a French-Sardinian victory under Napoleon III over the Austrians under Marshal Ferecis Gilead. Gilead? I don't know how to... Yeah, dude, Austria and Australia, they gotta, figure out one of them needs to rename their country, because they're just one letter away from being the other one. Or, one letter added or taken away. Anyway, in 1875, the Pacific Stock Exchange opened. Pacific Stock Exchange. 1 year later, in 1876, an express train called the Transcontinental Express arrived in San Francisco, California via the first Transcontinental Railroad, only 83 hours and 39 minutes after having left New York City. Dang. Man, could you believe it used to take months to, travel from one side of the nation to another? And nowadays, we can just do it in mere hours, thanks to aircraft. But, until between then and now, there are trains, other planes, and automobiles, 2 years later, in 1878, Cyprus was ceded by Turkey to Britain for administrative purposes. 1892, Oil City and Titusville in Pennsylvania was destroyed by an oil tank explosion, resulting in the deaths of 130 people. 4 years later, in 1896, Henry Ford took his first Ford through the streets of Detroit. Dang, talk about showboating. But that's a sign of things to come. Essentially, Henry Ford was the first Adolf Hitler. And by that, I mean, he made the people's car in the United States, and then Hitler made the Volkswagen, the people's car, in Britain. Germany. What the hell? Wow. Britain? Wow. I'm going to get some comments on that. 1913, English suffragette Emily Davidson died after throwing herself in front of King George V's horse, Anmer, during running of the Derby at Epsom. Alright. So, that's essentially like a suicide bomber before there are bombs? Or during? I don't know. Before they were willing to take other people to hell with them, they were killing themselves. 1913, General Aleksei Brusilov began a massive Russian offensive on the Eastern Front during World War I. 1917, the first Pulitzer Prize was awarded to Richels and Elliott's Julia Ward Howe. Okay. Also in 1917, American men began registering to the draft. And also in 1917, the most excellent order of British Empire was inaugurated by King George V to recognize the efforts of his people in World War I. 1 year later, in 1918, French troops, with the aid of U.S. troops, stopped the Germans at Chateau Thierry as they attempted to cross the Marne. 365 days later, in 1919, U.S. Congress passed the women's suffrage bill, the 19th Amendment. Also on that same day, same year, U.S. Marines invaded Costa Rica. We'll see what happens when we give women suffrage. We invade countries. It's a joke. 1 year later, in 1920, Peace of Trianon between Allies and Hungary occurred. 6 years later, in 1926, Ignacy Mościcki became president of Poland, which he held office until 1939. Dang. So that's 13 years. Pretty good. Anyway, 2 years later, in 1928, President of the Republic of China, Zhang Zuolin, was assassinated by Japanese agents. Good. 1934, Dr. Frederick Banting, co-discoverer of insulin, was knighted. Alright. In 1940, British completed the Miracle of Dunkirk by evacuating 338,226 Allied troops from France via a flotilla of over 800 vessels, including Royal Navy destroyers, merchant marine boats, fishing boats, pleasure craft, and even lifeboats. Dang. Also in 1940, Winston Churchill's speech, We shall fight on the seas and oceans, was broadcast, you know. Anyway, in 1941, Nazis forbade Jews access to beaches and swimming pools. Dang. They had rights that long? And I'm going to say, the Nazis were a lot more lenient on the Jews than the liberals are being on us. Tell you what. 1941, Republic of Croatia ordered all Jews to wear a star with the letter Z. Just like those vaccine passports. Yeah, just like, those mandatory, chips, mandatory masks. 1942, during the Battle of Midway, it began. Japan's first major defeat in World War II occurred. Yep. That's because, conveniently, when Pearl Harbor happened, all of our aircraft carriers were somewhere else. Anyway, also in 1942, the Capitol Record Company opened for business. 1 year later, in 1943, Argentina was taken over by General Rossel and Colonel Juan Perón. 365 days later, in 1944, the Fifth Army entered and liberated Rome from Mussolini's fascist armies. We have two more 1944s here. This one is French General Charles de Gaulle arrived in London. And then General Eisenhower canceled the planned D-Day invasion on June 5th after receiving unfavorable weather reports. But there was a possible opening on June 6th, so they went for it, and history since then. 1945, the 6th U.S. Marine Division occupied Oroke Peninsula, Okinawa. Also in 1945, the United States, Soviet Union, Britain, and France agreed to divide up occupied Germany. 1 year later, in 1946, the largest solar prominence was observed at 300,000 miles or 500,000 kilometers. What's a solar prominence? Let me look that up here real quick. Solar prominence. Well, while that's figuring out what it wants to do, I'm going to take us up into 1947, in which the U.S. House of Representatives approved the Taft-Hartley Act. I wonder what that is. Anyway, solar prominence, also known as a filament when viewed against a solar disk, is a large, bright feature extending outward from the sun's surface. prominences are anchored to the sun's surface in the photosphere and extend outwards into the sun's hot outer atmosphere called the corona, or the corona. Alright, I'm going to add this wiki into the underbar. Un momento. Alright, added. And what is this Taft-Hartley Act? The Labor Management Relations Act of 1947, better known as the Taft-Hartley Act, is a United States federal law that restricts the activities and power of labor unions. It was enacted by the 80th United States Congress over the veto of President Harry S. Truman, becoming law on June 23rd in 1947. Okay. For further reading on that subject, please refer to the description, underbar, whatever it is you want to call it. Moving on up into 1956, the secret speech by Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev criticizing Joseph Stalin was made public. 1 year later, in 1957, the first commercial coal pipeline was placed in operation. First commercial pipe that was placed was started, I guess. Weird wording. 1961, U.S. President John F. Kennedy and Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev met at the Vienna Summit in Austria. 8 years later, in 1969, 22-year-old man snuck into wheel pod of a jet parked in Havana and survived a 9-hour flight to Spain despite thin oxygen levels at 29,000 feet. I would not recommend, taking a plane like that. Because they fly higher than that, and actually somebody tried to do that. They got crushed. Somebody else tried to smuggle themselves in the non-pressurized cargo container, and they suffocated. So. Anyway, 1970, Tonga, which was formerly the Friendly Islands, declared independence from the United Kingdom. Good. 3 years later, a patent for the ATM was granted to Don Wetzel, Tom Barnes, and George Chaston. So thank those three for the automated teller machine. Whenever you say ATM machine, you're saying automated teller machine. So, to prevent you from sounding like an idiot, know what the acronyms are for. Alright? It's not that difficult, It's not called an atom, ATM means three words, alright? Anyway, 1974, never repeated 10-cent beer night at Cleveland. Unruly fans stumble onto the field and cause the Indians to forfeit the game to the Rangers with the score tied 5-5 in the ninth. Dang, I like a 10-cent beer. Sign me up. Also in 1974, Saudi Arabia announced that it would increase its participation in Aramco to 60%. 1 year later, in 1975, the oldest animal fossils in the U.S. were discovered in North Carolina. 4 years later, in 1979, Joe Clark was sworn in as the youngest Prime Minister in Canadian history. Nice. How old was he? Joe Clark. Let's see here. Joe Clark. How old was Joe Clark when he became Prime Minister? 39. Okay, not bad. So I still have 4 years. 1989, Beijing policemen shot and wound Chinese Premier Li Ping. Oh well. Also in 1989, oh wow, we have a lot of 89s here. Alright, so for the next 1, 2, 3, 4, we have, these are all in 89. Eastern Europe's first partially free elections in 40 years were held in Poland. Solidarity Party came to power. Also, a gas exploded near 2 passenger trains in the USSR, killing hundreds. Dang. I hate it when you do this 100s. No, killing hundreds. Also in 1989, the largest parade in Bronx history honored the 350th anniversary of what? The Bronx? I don't know. And then also 1989, the Tiananmen Square massacre. Chinese troops cleared the square of student protesters. Unofficial figures placed death toll near 1,000. Dang. And we still work with them. Huh? Since 1989? We think we're so good. We think we're anti-slavery. No, we're not. No, we're not. Anybody out there who has an iPhone, who has a pair of Nikes, who has pretty much anything, is a supporter of slavery. That's just how it is. If you really don't support slavery, stop buying from China. It's not that hard. 1990, Greyhound Bus filed bankruptcy. Well, that didn't last long because they're still around. Also in 1999, Dr. Jack Kevorkian assisted an Oregon woman to commit suicide, beginning a national debate over the right to die. What, people don't have the right to die now? What the hell? You know, what kind of sick, twisted society do we live in? Like, you know, oh no, you have to suffer like the rest of us. Oh, hell no. Anyway, moving on up into 1991, the first post-World War II non-communist government in Albania occurred. Also in 1991, Pope John Paul II compared abortion with Nazi murders. Well, you know, with how things are today, you know, how all these liberals just love getting abortions, they're addicted to it. Much like Cartman was in South Park. Maybe it's the same thing. In 1991, Robert S. Strauss became U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union. And then in 1997, the United Nations Security renewed its quote-unquote oil for food initiative, whereby Iraq may sell $2 billion worth of oil to buy food, medicine, and other necessities to alleviate civilian suffering under the sanctions imposed when it invaded Kuwait in 1990. Yeah. Something tells me that we were going to go back in there anyway. Jumping on up into the 2001, Gyanendra, the last king of Nepal, ascended to the throne after the massacre in the royal palace. Yeesh. 2008, British TV presenter Michael Perkinson was knighted by Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace. 2012, U.S. drone attack killed 15 militants in Pakistan, including high-ranking Al-Qaeda official Abu Yahya al-Libi. Also in 2012, a car bomb killed 26 and injured 190 others in central Baghdad in Iraq. Also 2012, Japan's stock market plummeted to record lows, with the S&P Topex 150 reaching its lowest level since 1983. And the last 2012 article here, wedding party bus crashed, killing 23 and injuring 60 while in Islamabad, Pakistan. Well, you know, don't get into wedding buses and don't have a wedding in Pakistan, especially in Islamabad. I'm not sure if that was before or after. I think that was after we killed bin Laden. 2 years later, in 2014, 10 Nigerian generals and 5 other senior military officers were court-martialed for providing arms and information to jihadist terrorist group Boko Haram. Sorry about that. I have like permanent numbing in this side of my jaw from previous dental exploits. 2017, Ariana Grande headlined benefit concert for victims of her Manchester concert bombing, also featuring Coldplay, Miley Cyrus, Justin Bieber, and Katy Perry. Yeah, well, all of them except for Coldplay just suck. So, 1 year later, in 2018, U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted, quote, "I have the absolute right to pardon myself," end quote. Did he though? I think that's fake news. That has to be fake news. Did he? Like, let me look that up. Like, I cannot believe that. That is absolute fake news. Well, while that's loading in, I'm going to move on up to 2018 as well. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton, during an interview with NBC, said he hadn't and doesn't need to apologize to Monica Lewinsky. No, he doesn't. Of course. Here we go. CNN Politics. Okay. Yeah, BBC, CNBC, Washington Post. Yeah, that's fake news. Yep, I'm just, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this because this is not even right. That did not happen at all. And our sources are notoriously left-leaning, so I wouldn't be too surprised that they did that. Anyway, 2019, former U.S. School Secretary Guard Scott Peterson was arrested and charged with neglect of a child and culpable negligence for not confronting a gunman during Parkland School massacre in landmark case. So where's that attitude with this recent shooting in Texas, huh? How come nobody's going after it? How come the police officer who gave the order for everybody else to stand down was behind closed doors voted into the Senate or something? Not the Senate, but some kind of political position. Like what was it? Let me look this up here real quick. I posted it in my Discord. Was it the news? Yeah. Wait, no, that's something else. Well, I can't find it. But yeah, no, the actually, hold on. Was it a video? Whatever. He was voted into something behind closed doors. Anyway, 2019 as well. Over 100,000 people marked the 30th anniversary of Beijing's Tiananmen Square massacre in Hong Kong and around the world. Also in 2019, the movement in Japan to end compulsory wearing of high heels in workplaces trend with the hashtag #Coup2. And also in 2019, the deforestation of the Amazon forest in Brazil was the fastest for decades, as 740 square kilometers were cleared in 30 days, according to Brazilian Space Research Institute. Guys, that's our lungs. All right, money is worthless if we can't breathe. Or I guess you're just gonna, charge for air now. We're gonna turn into Mars from Total Recall, except we're gonna be on Earth. God, society is just sprinting towards self-destruction. Moving on to 2020, thousands ignore a recent ban and mark the anniversary of Tiananmen Square massacre in Hong Kong. Good. Yeah, that was during the pandemic when everything was locked down. And the next couple here are going to be in 2020. The United Nations report criticizing human rights violations in the Philippines, including the deaths of 8,000 during its war on drugs, a day after county's House of Representatives passed a new anti-terrorism law. Also in 2020, memorial for George Floyd, led by Reverend Al Sharpton, killed in... no, he was not killed in police custody. He died. While... this leftist shit is just getting out of hand. Like, we get it. You're trying to push a narrative, but stop trying to change things. Stop literally lying to push your narrative. I'm not even going to read the rest of that. It's pissing me off. 2020, a state of emergency was declared after 20,000 tons of diesel oil spilled near the Russian city of Norilsk, Siberia, within the Arctic Circle. Yeah, that was intentional in order to artificially drive up the prices of gas. And then 1 year later, or 1 year ago, in 2029, Nepalese Prime Minister KB Sharma Oli made a desperate plea for vaccines amid his country's devastating COVID-19 second wave, reporting nearly 9,000 daily cases late May. Yeah, because they literally write everything off as COVID. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I actually spoke to somebody who was a doctor, and he had somebody come in for being hit by a truck. He got hit by a truck, and obviously he didn't make it, but then they wrote it off as COVID. How does that make sense? Narrative. Anyway, moving on up in the burst, starting us off in 1394, Philippa of England was born on this date. She was a queen of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, dying in 1430. Why is that? 1704, Benjamin Huntsman was an English inventor and businessman, dying in 1776. But what was his inventions? Let's see here. Inventor and manufacturer of cast or crucible steel. Alright. That's interesting. I'll add that to the underbar right now. Let's see here. Add. Alright. Moving on up into 1744. Patrick Ferguson was a Scottish soldier who designed the Ferguson rifle, dying in 1780. Let's see here. What does the Ferguson rifle look like? Ferguson rifle. Is it the Ferguson rifle? Yeah, Ferguson rifle. There we go. Images. Okay. Interesting. So it's like it popped open to allow you to load and something. Why can't I find the right one? 1801, James Pentithorne was an English architect who designed Victoria Park. Let's take a look at Victoria Park here. Yep, looks like a park. Interesting. And now it's all modernized with all this garbage. Doesn't even... What is all this crap, you know? Jeez. 1910, Christopher Cockerell was an English inventor who invented the... an English engineer who invented the hovercraft, dying in 1999. 1915, Modibo Keita was a Malian educator and politician who was the first president of Mali. Nice. 1926, Robert Earl Hughes was born on this date. He was a U.S. citizen who was the heaviest human being recorded in the history of the world during his lifetime, dying in 1958. Let's take a look at this guy. Robert Earl Hughes. Yep. Dang. That's a big guy. What was his weight, though? 1,071 pounds. And he can still stand up under his own power. I mean, he had a cane, but still, he wasn't bedridden. Most of these fucking wastes of space, they needed forklifts to get around people. Beauty means curves. No, it doesn't, Calvin Klein. No, it doesn't. Anyway, 1915. No, we've done that. 1926, Judith Malina was a German U.S. actress and director who co-founded the Living Theater, dying in 2015. 1928, Ruth Messheimer is a German U.S. sex therapist, talk show host, professor, author, and Holocaust survivor. Welcome to the show, Mr. Sohan. You're only about a half hour late. We are already in bursts. I am up to 1932. Why don't you finish up bursts for us here? Your microphone is still muted, so I guess you're still AFK. Alright, so let's see here. 1932, we have John Drew Barrymore, was a U.S. actor, dying in 2004, and that makes me wonder, like, did Drew Barrymore coattail off of his fame, his name, and take it over herself? I don't know. Then 4 years later, 1936, we have Vince Camuto, who was born on this date. He was a U.S. fashion designer and businessman who co-founded Nine West, dying in 2015. 1937, Mortimer Zuckerman is a Canadian U.S. businessman and publisher who founded Boston Properties. 1953, Susumu Ojima is a Japanese businessman who founded Hoosier, whatever that is. 1960, Bradley Walsh is an English television presenter, comedian, singer, and former footballer. Oh, there you are. You there?
Yeah.
Alright. We are in bursts. I am in 1962. Why don't you finish up bursts for us?
Let me scroll all the way down. 1962, Krzysztof Polosewicz, Polish race car driver. 1968, Roger Lynn, U.S. actor, director, producer, and screenwriter. 1968, Albie Shore, U.S. R&B singer, songwriter, keyboard player, and producer.
His actual name is Albert Joseph Brown III. Fancy.
Okay. Also, 1972, Robert Hubble, U.S. comedian, actor, producer, and screenwriter. 1975, Russel Brand, English comedian and actor.
And he has a good YouTube channel. Go subscribe to him. Actually, I'll hunt down his YouTube channel for y'all. Post it in my underbar.
1975, Angelina Jolie, U.S. actress, filmmaker, humanitarian activist. Daughter of... I forgot who she's the daughter of.
Maybe her mom?
No, of an actor.
Angelina Jolie, right?
Yeah, he's...
Let me look that up.
He's a well-known actor.
Marceline Bertrand and John Voight.
Yeah, John Voight.
Ah. Who's John Voight?
A well-known actor.
Oh, that guy. He was in Anaconda. Okay. Interesting.
Also, 1977, Roman Miro Shevchenko, Iranian guitarist and composer.
I think it was
1981.
A Uranian? Yeah. Isn't uranium? Is
Ukrainian?
Is Ukraine a country? Or is that like uranium?
Ukrainian.
Yeah.
Country.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think. Like, is there a country called Ukraine? I know there's Ukraine, but you said Uranian, and it sounded so right. So I'm like, wait, is that? I'm sorry.
Ukrainian. Oh, okay. 1981. Natalia Vodopayanova, Soviet basketball player. 1985. Leon Bada, African Perry and DJ.
Now, that was the guy with the big head thing. Like, you remember that guy who had the problem with his skull or something?
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on to the deaths. Starting us off in 756, we have Shomu, was a Japanese emperor, was born in 701. 863, we have Charles, Archbishop of Mainz. No one knows who his birthday was. And then we have 1102, when Ladislaw the First Herman, Polish nobleman, birth, and I think BC is christening, so he was christened in 1106. Wait, how could he... Wait, I'm gonna have to double check my source here. How could he die before he was christened? Like, I'm gonna have to double check on this here. 1 second. This doesn't make any sense. Come on, load. What was that? 1102. Wait, we're in deaths, right? Okay.
Yes.
We had Slee. June the 4th. Why is this not on here? Wait, 11, yeah. 1044, okay, I screwed that up. BC was 10... Wait. Polish nobleman. Yeah, BC was 1044. Okay, that was weird. Okay, I must have gotten this other guy here, yeah. Alright. Anyway, your turn.
1394, Mary de Bohun, wife of Henry IV of England. 1453, Androkios Polylogos Anticozinos, Byzantine commander. 1472, Nisa Coyote, Aztec poet.
Bless you. Jumping up into 1585, Muritus died on the state, which is fairly interesting, because that sounds like the Mexican word for death, muertos. He was a French philosopher and author, born in 1526. 1647, we have Canonius, was a Grand Chief Sachem of the Narragansett, was born in 1565, and what is even that? Like, Grand Chief Sachem of the Narragansett. I have no idea. Well, while that's all loading, oh, finally loading. Okay, well, what is... Okay, so the Narragansett is an Indian tribe, and the Chief Sachem is the chief, I guess. Okay, well, so that's pretty self-explanatory. Then, 1801, we have Frederick Muhlenberg, was a American minister and politician who is the first Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, having been born in 1750. Nice.
1809, Nikolai Alabigrad, Danish neoclassical and history painter, sculptor, and architect. 1922, W.H.R. Rivers, English and anthropologist, neurologist, ethnologist, and psychiatrist.
His full name is William House Rivers. Interesting.
1989, Dick Brown, U.S. cartoonist.
1992, Carl Stoltz died on the States. He was a U.S. businessman who founded Little League Baseball, born in 1910. Because, of course, parents didn't have enough things to put bets on. Now they started betting on their kids. So, 1997, Ronnie Lane was an English singer, songwriter, guitarist, and producer. Was born in 1946. And last but not least, we have Peter Bevan, died on this date in 2012. He was a New Zealand architect who designed the Littleton Road Tunnel Administration Building. He was born in 1925. And let's take a look at what this building looks like. That's an interesting building. Actually, that's a very interesting. I'd like to work there. Pretty cool. All sorts of angles and fun little things. Anyway, that concludes the show. Once again, you can check the underbar of the description for any links that you may be interested in, which also includes
Shohin TV on Twitch.
And everything Omni Coalition. For your dose of past events daily, we stream every day at 10 a.m. Pacific time.
Yeah. 12 Central. 12 to 1 Central.
Yep. For all of you and all of us, I am A.O. Xander. And that was Sohen. And you are you. And until you see us tomorrow, don't forget to look right and left at every intersection, rate 5 thumbs, and subscribe. Until then, toodles. Let's go, Brandon.